Hey guys, welcome back to another Cultured Boys discussion. I'm Pepe, and as always, I'm joined by Nathan. And today we're talking about Yakuza. Ooh, but not the normal kind of Yakuza, the live-action Yakuza, the TV show, not the real group. Yeah, we're not talking about real life Yakuza. We're talking about the live-action show from the video game.
Yes.
Like a Dragon Yakuza, to make it completely clear.
Yes.
Right. This is on Amazon Prime. It dropped.
Yep.
How long ago did it drop, Nathan? This came out quite recently.
It was part 1, as in the first 3 episodes, was October 24th. And then the second 3 was on November 1st.
That's wild that it split. I can understand that a part 1 and 2 of a season, but the fact that they have 3 episodes per part feels a little bit silly. Like, that's quite bad.
Yeah, I know. Right?
Just drop the whole thing at the same time. Anyway, how are you, Nathan? How are you?
I'm good in general. We'll get to my thoughts eventually.
So just a heads up as well, for those that don't know, any long-time viewer of the channel will know that Nathan is a huge Yakuza fan. He's played all the games, all the spin-offy ones as well.
Yeah,
like
basically
Judgment and that. You've done,
anything,
all that stuff.
anything available to us recently in modern times in the West that is like a dragon related, I've played.
Yes. Me on the other hand, I've Nathan's gifted me like some Yakuza games before on the PlayStation.
I think I gifted you Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2.
Yes,
2 separate Christmases.
Yeah, he's gifted me Kiwami for sure. And I think my parents might have gifted me 0 or something because I had it on my wish list. So I have 2 physical Yakuza games. And then I also have Yakuza 7 or Like a Dragon. I have that.
Do not get confused with the TV show because that is Yakuza Like a Dragon or Yakuza 7 the game, but the TV show is Like a Dragon Yakuza.
Right. I'm gonna stick. If I'm gonna describe that one in this episode, we're just gonna call it Yakuza 7 because it might be a little bit easier.
Yes.
So I have Yakuza 7 on PlayStation because I downloaded it on the PS Plus app. And I also got it on Steam for £4. And I've again played very, very minimal of those games as well. So you could say that I am basically willing to get into Yakuza, but have played a minimal amount of the games.
I think the funniest thing is, if you really think about it, you know more about Ichiban, the new protagonist, than you know of Kiryu,
Yeah,
the first protagonist, of which the show focuses on Kiryu, and Ichiban will be nowhere.
No, absolutely not. So, like, obviously, I know of Kiryu as the protagonist for all the ones prior to 7.
Yes.
And obviously there is the other one where was it the man who erased his name?
Yes.
Sick. I'm glad it was either going to be that or the man who has no name or the man who forgot his name. I'm glad I went for the first one. But I obviously know that he's a protagonist of those games, but I don't know much else apart from that. So what's gonna happen is Nathan, long-time fan of the show or the games, even me, who has never experienced anything Yakuza, have watched this Amazon Prime show. I've watched all 6 episodes. How many episodes do you watch, Nathan?
I also watched all 6.
Okay, cool. Do you want to give a rundown of what this is? Because I feel like we've talked about Yakuza a bunch on this channel. Like, is it
the
worth,
only part
like
of the rundown that I can do that's left is the actual sort of like quick summary of what it is, because we've already said Amazon Prime Video and then how it was released. So like all that's left is a summary.
Give the rundown. It might be different from the actual games as well. This is another thing we can get into.
Okay, so set in 1995 and 2005, chronicles a Yakuza warrior's life, his childhood ties, and the consequences of his uncompromising sense of justice and duty. Thank you, IMDb.
Before I get into your thoughts, shall I give
Yeah,
my thoughts?
I was
Because
actually gonna say
I
let's hear what you think first because
you're right.
I feel like I could do an episode all by myself about my thoughts.
Right. Okay. So, as someone that has no knowledge of the series
Yeah.
whatsoever, um, I think this is quite decent as a show. I don't actually think it's that. Some obviously, as someone who has no prior knowledge, I think it's the story's decent. I quite like the story
Mhm.
there. And it gives like a. I do like how like switches between. Is it 1995? Was it
Yeah,
1995? It
95
was.
and 2005.
No, and so it's 10 years down the
10
line.
years, yeah.
Quick math. So it's a story between like 10 years in the past. And I start to think like, because obviously I know like certain characters. I think you've
Mhm.
mentioned Haruka before, and I know you've
Yep,
mentioned Kiryu. I don't
yep.
know any other characters. And obviously Majima as
I
well.
was gonna say, you
So
know
I know,
Majima, come
yeah,
on.
I
You
know
know
Majima, but
Majima from
like
Majima
Majima,
everywhere.
but Majima's not in this at all, really. Like he is, but he's got like
No, I think he has a total of like 5 minutes of screen time?
yeah, because he makes like
Maybe 10
a
minutes at
quick.
most.
I think yeah, he has like a little like scuffle with Kiryu and what's the other fella? Can't remember.
Nishikiyama
Nishikiyama. That's it.
or Nishiki as they always cut it
Let's
down
go for
to.
Nishiki because I think it's going to be easier for me to say Nishiki, and it's also short for both of us. And then obviously, he comes back again towards the end of the
Yeah.
series, like and he's like there with his eye patch and the
Yeah,
the
that's where
Majima that
he's
I know,
like
basically.
looks like what you know and is like the
Yeah,
the crazy
which
like Kiryu-chan.
which makes me think, like,
Mhm.
my one big question throughout the whole thing is, in which game is this set? And like, I was thinking, is this Zero? Because it feels like it's set up as Zero, but it's not. Okay, is it
No,
Kiwami?
so
Or Yakuza One?
this is
Hmm.
supposed to mostly be Yakuza 1. So
Okay, yeah.
it's okay, I will say this. In the game,
Hmm.
Kiryu takes the fall for Nishiki,
Hmm.
like in the show.
Hmm. Yeah,
He
yeah,
then
yeah,
goes to jail for a decade, for 10 years, and then comes back in
yeah.
2005. So this is supposed to mostly be Yakuza 1. Like Kiryu is even younger, like in Zero. Like
Right.
Zero being the prequel that it is supposed to be like Kiryu and Nishiki like as they're starting. So you know how like in the
Oh,
show
so
it portrays
okay,
them
yeah.
like 95 joining the Yakuza. Like Zero's kind
Right.
of like that part. Whereas
Okay,
like
yeah.
most of Kiwami or the first one is like the 2005 stuff.
I see, I see, I see, I see. So, like, there's no so the 80s bit, there's like nothing really. Like obviously where you have like the flashbacks of like Kiryu when he's watching the is it the Dragon of Dojima? I think it is. Is that
Yeah.
what's he called again? Yeah, the
Yeah, it's the
original one.
Dragon of
Yeah, okay,
Dojima.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah, 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 666. So there's all that kind of stuff there. So like that's one thing. So you're flickering between mostly two different decades, but also there's a little bit backstory like here and there for like when they were younger, basically. It's all in the space of one decade though, so it's 90s and it's the mid 2000s. And what do I think of it? I think, let's put it this way, I was willing to continue like pretty much one episode after the other. So I watched it in three parts. I watched one and two one night,
Mhm.
and then I watched three and four another, and then I watched five and six today. So
Okay.
I've like kind of spaced out over a week, basically, just different nights where I've been able to fit in,
Mhm.
basically. But I quite liked it for the most part. I think it isn't the best live action I've seen.
No.
And I think like there's certain things like I can imagine there's always this thing with some like like Japanese live action. Sometimes they can be really really good.
Yeah.
Other times they can like come across as really low budget. Sometimes I don't know if you feel the same way.
I think I know what you mean.
Acting wise, I think was fine. Yeah, like like this one, I think like you've got like luckily because this is quite grounded in reality,
Yeah.
it isn't too bad. So they don't have to worry about too much like CGI or anything like that or mad
Mm,
special effects. You got to focus on the blood, which I think kind of like looks a little bit like I think it's a lot of the blood special effects to me kind of come across a little bit low budget. That's the thing that I see.
fair.
The acting is fine, I guess. I think I could see that like there might be a few gripes with Kiryu, maybe. I feel like that might be something that some people may have issue with because I feel like
Mm,
Kiryu is supposed. I don't know, like my impressions, right? As someone that is again completely
yeah.
outside the series, like I imagine Kiryu to be a lot more stoic in this. In this one, he is stoic, but like there's some things which I thought like, oh, like he kind of speaks a lot
Okay.
more
I
than I
see.
thought he would
Yeah,
do.
I see what you mean,
Yeah,
and you're not wrong. He does speak a lot more, but I also think that the stoicism is not anyone's fault. It's just that
yeah,
in the games he has that very stoic look to him, and
hmm,
like the actor they have, Ryoma Takeuchi, is he's good. Don't get me wrong. He's a pretty
yeah,
good
yeah,
Kiryu,
yeah.
but like I just feel like that specific stoicism is hard
Hmm.
to actually replicate.
I think especially from video game to like live action kind of thing
Yeah.
like this as well. Like especially when you're playing like the main character of that video game, where I believe there is it like Kiryu's like pathway in Yakuza games is detected like dictated by the player themselves. Is that right? Or is that like
Well, he there's always a set story,
yeah, yeah.
but like again, it's just hard to replicate Kiryu because
Mm-hmm.
like this is a character that has existed in video games
Mm-hmm.
since
Yeah.
the early 2000s. Kiryu's
Yeah.
been around probably since about 2005-ish himself anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Yeah, yeah.
so like the world is just like used to this stoic yakuza Japanese
Mm-hmm.
man that it's just kind of like I feel like Ryoma is just a bit too pretty boy. Just a little bit
Yeah.
too handsome. As in like not in that saying like oh Kiryu's model is like not a handsome man, but it's like Kiryu is stoic handsome whereas
Mm-hmm.
like Ryoma is kind of like pretty boy. You know, I could see him like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that's a
Yeah.
model. You know what I mean? Like if that was a
Yeah.
male model, I'd be like, yeah, of course.
I think it's like part of it, like you have to think between like playing the younger version of themselves as well as the older version. So they have to play the like two sides of it. And
Yeah.
there's certain bits of it, like Nishiki, for example. I think he he is the biggest difference between his like
It's the
I'm gonna call it a
hairstyle,
little bit of a time skip.
isn't
It's the
it?
hairstyle for one. Obviously, in like the first part of it as well, Nishiki's very like upbeat as
Mm,
well. He's like he's more like a bit of a goofy character
yeah.
there. Whereas obviously in after 10 years, he's very much like what like nothing. He gives nothing away. Like he's the boss of like who's he the boss of again? Like
So
you
in
know,
the
is it
show, he
yeah.
is basically the next patriarch of the Dojima
Hmm.
family, the
Yeah.
Dojima clan. But in the games, he's actually the patriarch of his own family, like his own
Oh, really?
subsidiary of the
Okay, yeah.
Tojo clan. So in the
Ah,
games, there's actually the Nishikiyama family or clan.
really? Okay, yeah. So
Yeah.
okay, that's the one difference then.
So like
Okay, fair, fair,
in the
fair.
game, he actually is built himself up even further. Like,
Right.
okay, so you know, the Nishikiyama clan is a subsidiary of the Tojo clan, and I think at
Hmm.
one point was a subsidiary of the uh Dojima clan, but separated again.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
like he built in the games, it's actually even more impressive because he like builds himself up even further than that. Like,
Interesting. Okay, yeah. Like I don't know, like there's like what I think where I started off with that as well is that like trying to like find that balance between making them go back to their younger selves
yeah,
and their current selves.
that's
I think you had to
yeah,
find the right balance of it because imagine if they had like Kiryu, like he is in the games about like pretty hench, like probably looks like roughly like could be middle aged in his 30s or whatever. And then having him have that same actor play the younger version, it might be a little bit like off, I'd say. Unless they
no, yeah,
did a
you're
different
right actually.
casting.
Sorry, I
Yeah.
was just sitting here thinking about it when you said middle age. I'm like, how old was he in the first one? And I'm like, in Yakuza 0, he was 24, 25.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Mhm.
in Yakuza 1, he would be around mid 30s probably. When
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
finding out of jail, I think yeah, he's about mid 30s.
Mhm. Interesting,
Okay.
yeah. So, like, yeah, so if you had a character full of their mid-30s come back and play younger self, it might be a little bit, like, a little bit grease, if you know what I mean, like, a little bit like old people playing like a teenager, and it looks a bit weird.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not unheard of though in like, in in Hollywood at least to have like people
Yeah, but
like much
it's never a
older.
good thing to I mean, that's if they
Yeah.
can look the part, though, that's,
Yeah,
I
okay,
don't think
obviously,
someone
I'm
yeah,
not
yeah.
I ain't saying
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
you're not wrong. You can't have some like 40-something-year-old like Japanese man come and be like, "Oh, I'm 18-year-old Kiryu. Fucking hell, my back hurts."
Yeah. Hello, fellow kids.
Ohio.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, like, in terms of casting, I don't think there's a, like, again, I didn't see any issues with it really. I don't think there was any like actors which
Um,
over acted or anything. I don't think there was any there that I
no,
thought were
I
too rough.
appreciate in this that the acting was like more realistic because
Yeah.
you and I have always had the same like Japanese acting's fine, but it's when they go the over the top that it's just kind of
Yeah.
like, ugh. And this is because it's Yakuza, the
Mhm.
games that does have some wacky, crazy parts. You can easily
Mhm.
see how they could be like, right. So you got
Yeah.
Kiryu, right? That's all just like, almost like your Jotaro type character, just, stoic
Mhm.
and like, yada yada does it. Whereas then you've got
Yeah.
like your crazy Majima types over there that are screaming and like fucking popping out of the sewers like,
Yeah.
Kiryu-chan!
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That's like, you could easily, and part of me was hoping to see some of that come through a little
What,
bit,
some of the
but we
crazy
didn't
I
really.
wish, but we didn't. And
Yeah.
it depends though.
Arguably, I think there've been two sides to it though. If it did come through, I think it would have taken you out of the show completely. It would
Oh
have been
yeah,
like,
for
oh, of
sure.
course, here it is.
There
Like,
I watched a clip because they did it for promo instead of Ryoma doing Bakamitai
yeah, yeah,
karaoke, and
okay.
that took me completely out of it because
Yeah.
I've only ever heard Kiryu do it. Most
Mhm.
of the games that I've played the karaoke mini game, I've heard Kiryu's
Mhm.
voice. It's very deep.
Yeah.
Ryomu's
Yeah.
voice is not as deep, so
Yeah.
it doesn't sound the same, and you're like, but that's supposed to be Kiryu. Like
See,
this man is
I
dressed as
I
Kiryu, and it just doesn't sound the same.
see that promo popped up for me of the back of its eye thing, and I avoided it because I thought, "Oh, this is gonna be in the show." I'll wait for it to be in the show, and then I'll, like, see it
Oh,
then.
see, I think that's where
But
I
it
spoiled
it never
myself because I
yeah.
saw an article where they confirmed like we're not doing any of the side stuff. You're not going to see him do any wacky mini games or
Yeah,
anything. He's not going to the arcade. He's not doing
yeah.
darts. He's not doing bowling. He's not doing karaoke. And I was like, okay, I mean that's fair. That's fair.
Makes sense completely, yeah.
Yeah, you've only got so much time to tell a story. You don't need to be like, Curious now going to go spend half an hour playing a full round of bowling to unlock the chicken.
Like, the manga cafe explodes. And meanwhile, Kira's like, right, okay, before that,
Bakamitai
I've
kodomo
yeah.
nanone.
Before that, I gotta get the 300 game. I'll be back in a sec.
Yeah, I need to get 3 strikes in a row to get the chicken manager.
Yeah. Like, it makes sense. Like, it makes sense why they cut out a lot of the goofy stuff.
Mm,
Because this feels very much like a J drama as well. Like,
mm,
if you had no idea of what Yakuza was, and
yeah.
you just switched on, you'd think this is just a J drama, like,
Oh,
about the
yeah, for sure.
Yakuza. Like, you wouldn't like it, and that's a good thing as well for those that, like, for me, for example, that obviously I know it comes from a game, but anyone could tune in and get a decent idea of what that story is. Obviously, I'm sure there are some glaring differences, which you probably will tell me in a bit, which I'm interested to hear as well.
Yep.
But for the most part, as a person that's gone in completely blind, I quite enjoyed this. Again, not the best live action, but I enjoyed the acting. I think all of the story was quite coherent. I didn't mind it so much. I think there was that twist at the end. I guess spoilers about like Nishiki being the
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
like yeah,
The
like all that kind of
demon of
stuff.
Shinjuku.
Yeah, and there's all that kind of stuff, and you do get like an idea. Oh, like of this is set in like it builds the world of we are in Yakuza territory. You get the idea that
Yeah.
there's all these families. They have their traditions. They have what they need to do, and like these guys aren't pushovers either. They're like, well, if you want to prove yourself, you have to do this. Like this doesn't feel like they're the laid back kind of thing. These guys do come across as serious gangsters,
Hmm.
and that is what I do like. It doesn't feel like you're watching this thinking like, oh, these guys say they're gangsters, but they're actually not like that bad at all. Like this is like, yeah, these guys are willing, like fucking, like they'll do some heinous shit, and it's like, okay, cool. Like, and you do get the idea, you get the sense that there is an empire here. You get a
Yeah.
lot of characters that come in, which are like like the senior people, like the senior members of the Yakuza versus like the new recruits. You get an idea that there is like a big community slash empire of these people. And I think that's what the show really does that well. Like it portrays that world building of the Yakuza and all their territories, really. It does that. It does a really good job of that.
Agreed.
I think if there's anything that I disliked about it, um okay, so this is like a small thing that I had. It's not actually about the show itself, though. This is more of an
Oh,
Amazon
okay.
Prime thing. Um, I wanted to watch the sub of this,
I think I know what
and
you're
I was
about to
like,
say.
yeah. And I was pretty much forced into watching the dubbed version of this show because every now and then the subtitles would just stop working.
Yep.
And you're like, what?
Yep.
Like, I don't get is it going to come in? And then I'd be waiting like about 30 seconds and they're still speaking and all the subtitles cut out. And I'm like, well, I don't want to watch the dub of this, but you're making me watch it. And by
I
default, they put the dub on straight away. And
Yep.
I was fuming about it because I actually really enjoyed, like, well, it should be an unspoken rule that if you're watching a live action show, you should watch it in that language. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
I don't like watching dub versions of live actions at all. I think it's like it's heinous. But I was forced into it by Amazon Prime because their subtitling was so bad, and I was just like, so for I think I managed to get through episode 1 with the subtitles,
Uh-huh.
and then 2 onwards, that's when it all just went downhill. I was like, oh, okay,
See,
that's when it started
I
fucking up. And that.
basically had the same issue. Something about their app just doesn't work. The
Yeah,
subtitles will just turn off. And anytime it turned off, unlike Pepe, I actually I paused the show or I let it run.
yeah,
I would then
yeah,
go back into the subtitle options, turn it
yeah,
off, turn it back on
yeah,
again, and then rewind
yeah.
to where it stopped. Where
Mhm.
I watched all 6 episodes in one go, I think I added
Mhm.
an extra hour and a half maybe on top from just having to
Bro,
constantly turn the fucking thing on and off. It's so
bro, that
annoying.
did not even that didn't even work for me. I tried. I literally went out of the show, went back into the show, turned the subtitles off, turned them on again. Like went from the like English dub, switched it back and forth. I did it so many times,
Oh,
and
it
the
didn't
subtitles
always
still
work.
did.
It didn't always work.
Yeah,
I did have to do a lot of fucking around, but like in general,
yeah.
what a fucking pain in the ass. What a
That
stupid
was
farce.
like for a $1 billion company, you need the Amazon. You need to sort that shit out, bro.
That is
That
such
was
stupid
fucked.
bollocks.
That was
In
so
it.
fucked.
It's honestly was so stupid. Why the fuck?
Yeah.
It's so fucking dumb.
So
Oh my god.
that was, if anything, like the show in general was actually quite fun. It's the fact that I had to
Yeah.
do that all the time, which is
The
it,
fucking
and that's what
app
kind of
itself
it-
ruined the
yeah.
experience. Stupid bollocks,
Absolutely,
man.
yeah, absolutely, I agree with you. And then like there's what was it? Is there anything else I thought that like again, that's not even the show's problem, that's Amazon's
Yeah.
problem. Is there anything that I didn't really I think it was only just like at times where you can see is a little bit like less budget compared to like a big like Netflix show, for
Yeah.
example. I think there's certain bits there. Again, it can't be helped. A budget's a budget. You're given a budget. You're given a
Yeah.
budget. Like you give what you work with. And at the end of the day, what this show is led on is its story and its characters. And for me, I think it's a solid. Like I'd say between a 7 and an 8. I'd say a 7.5 out of 10. I quite enjoyed it. I wouldn't go back and rewatch it, but it was decent. It was
Interesting.
decent.
Interesting.
Right. Here is the Yakuza fans interpretation of it. How did you feel about it, Nathan? Here we go.
I'm just gonna start this off by saying,
Mhm,
whilst it was based on Yakuza
mhm,
1 / Yakuza Kiwami,
mhm. Yeah.
wholly, almost its entire thing is almost a completely new thing.
Really? Okay.
There are details that are the same, i.e., Kiryu goes to prison. Kiryu takes the fall for Nishiki. Nishiki builds himself up.
Mhm.
But that's about it.
Wait. What about what about the other two orphans?
Miho, his sister,
Yes. Yes.
she's
Yeah.
fake. She's new. She doesn't exist in the games.
Right.
Yumi's sister, Aiko,
Yeah.
she doesn't
Yeah.
exist in the game.
Wait, but where did Haruka come from then? Because Haruka's in
Haruka
the
in the
game.
game is
Yeah.
Yumi's daughter,
Right.
not
Okay.
Aiko's daughter, because Aiko doesn't exist. Here's the thing.
Right. Yeah.
So, there are all my notes basically are how the show differs from the game.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
much it differs. There is no high scene. That never happened. In the game,
Okay.
in the
Yeah.
game, Nishiki, Kiryu, Yumi, they
Mhm,
do all grow
mhm.
up at Sunflower Orphanage, run by
Yeah.
Shintaro Kazama. That
Mhm.
part is true. However,
Yes.
they joined the Yakuza, the two of them
Yeah.
joined the Yakuza willingly because they respect Kazama-san so much and hear of his legendary exploits that they want to be like him. Kazuma is strict on them because he doesn't want them to join the Yakuza. He wants them to
Yeah.
live as normal citizens in society and
Right.
live a better life. He doesn't want them to join the Yakuza. They do it on their own.
Mhm.
Yumi does work for a bar called Serena, but
Mhm.
in the games, Serena is just a small bar in a building. It's not a huge hostess club. It's
Okay.
literally one of those
Okay.
standard Japanese bars where there's one woman running it, the mama, she runs the bar, and Yumi's her like barmaid or
Okay.
her
Yeah.
first hostess there. Like
Interesting. Okay.
that's so there's small differences like that already. Um
Right. Okay.
so
The
that
whole
whole
Miho thing just is a very interesting
yeah,
addition then in which
that's
case.
all
Because
made
that's
up.
a whole yeah.
Miho's made up, Aiko's made up. Lots of the characters aren't
That's
quite the same
wild.
as they are in the games. Like Yumi in the show is nothing like Yumi in the games.
Really?
Yumi in the games is actually like very kind and very understanding. She's not cold at all. She
Right,
she
okay.
she loves the two like brothers, but she does actually like Kiryu. And Nishiki does love Yumi.
Right, this is one thing I wanted to mention as well. Like, it completes it in mind until you mentioned it as well. Before you get
Mhm.
any further, like just so this is it's definitely my own opinion, not based off what Nathan said. Is that um in the show,
Yeah.
the stuff between Yumi and Kiryu feels very random. It all comes
Yeah.
into the final episode, and that's where Nishiki's like, "Oh, you like Kiryu, don't you?" I'm like, "Where did that come from?" Of course she doesn't. And then she kisses him, and you're like, "What? Wait, wait. So she does like him, but that is not like foreshadowed at all throughout any of the previous 5 episodes at all. It's nothing's like that." And I'm like, that came out of nowhere. And yeah,
It's weirdly shoehorned in, but like in the games,
yeah.
the three of them are still really
Yeah,
close.
okay,
They
yeah,
all
yeah.
move basically to Kamurocho or Kabukicho,
Right. Yeah,
which is the
yeah,
real
yeah.
life neighborhood.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and in Kiwami, basically, it's like one of the first things that happens in the game is like they go to Serena the bar, and
Mhm.
Kiryu like gives Yumi a gift. Like you go, you buy a gift, you bring it to her, and like so you know that the player as Kiryu likes Yumi. You find out that
Oh,
Yumi does actually like Kiryu, but Nishiki likes Yumi, so there's that whole sort of thing
okay.
going on. In the game, that's super early on, so you find that out like quite quickly.
Right. Ooh, interesting. Okay.
And the funny thing is, in the show, the patricide, essentially, when Nishiki takes down Sohei Dojima, that in the games, that kicks off almost right after like the Yumi birthday stuff. Like that's super, super
Really?
early on.
Wow.
Because in the game,
Right.
that's what kicks off the events of the whole thing.
No way. Okay.
And it plays out differently. Like how in the show, like I suppose we should have thrown up a spoiler warning for everything
Yeah.
like a long time ago. But like if you haven't played Yakuza 1, I'm about to spoil so much stuff.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So Pepe, I'm about to spoil the first game for you.
That's fine. That's fine. I mean, I've
Okay.
watched the show now, so I pretty much know it all anyway.
Well, you
Yo,
cheeky kid.
carry it. But yeah.
Right. So in the show, Nishiki kills Sohei Dojima,
Yes.
the patriarch,
Yes.
because he basically is like screwed him over, right?
Right. Yeah.
Because of the whole Miho thing, because he didn't
Yes.
convince Kiryu to
Bow out. Yeah.
bow out of the fight, like to lose. In the games,
Mhm.
because Nishiki loves Yumi, Sohei actually does something bad or tries to do something bad to Yumi. Nishiki saves her from him.
Right.
Kiryu comes in and takes the fall in basically the same way.
Okay. Yeah. Sound.
And then Yakuza 1 kicks off. Like the whole events
Okay.
of the
Yep.
game kicks off.
Cool.
So it plays out. The game is actually a lot darker, I'd suppose, because it involves things that we can't talk about
Right. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Yeah.
because
Yeah.
of censorship. Um, so that's a huge difference already. And again, like in the
That's
show, this takes
wild.
place
Yeah.
really late, like really, really
I mean,
late. That's like episode
it's the
like
last
4.
episode where you get
Oh, there you go.
like
Even.
you find out in the last episode, basically, or like the fifth or sixth episode is where you find out what exactly went
Yeah,
on back then. You get the whole story by those two episodes, basically.
yeah. But this is like I don't know the first 20 minutes of the game.
That's nuts. Okay, fair. So you knew exactly where this was going, really. Well, I guess
Yeah,
you could have probably imagined that it might go a different way, considering there's so many differences.
I
They could have played that differently as well. I guess that's the one
yeah
factor, I guess, which is like,
I had an idea of where it was supposed to go because obviously I
yeah,
played the games, so I have an idea of where the story goes. It sort of spun it in a similar direction, but for different reasons.
yeah, yeah,
They
yeah.
play it more around this made up sister, and they make Millennium Tower out to be like this much, 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 much like more important thing to the Yakuza, whereas actually in the games, Millennium Tower was a bigger thing in Yakuza 0 than it is in Yakuza 1
Okay.
because like it I don't want to spoil Yakuza 0. I'll leave that as is
But
because
so
that's normally like a
was the
jumping on point.
American
He's not in it.
was the American fella? So that's another
He's
completely
made
new
up.
character. Yeah. Okay.
His
Fair.
sister's made up.
Yeah. Fair.
Majima isn't even that prevalent in the first game. Outside of the Majima everywhere, where he just pops up to fight you in the first game. That's it.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
doesn't do anything, really.
Really? Wow. Okay. So there's no like backstory of him then in
No,
those games. Then is
no,
it he just
because
turns up and wants to
his
fight?
backstory is in
Right.
Yakuza 0.
Right. And is that anyway similar? Like you know spoilers. You can just say yes or no. Oh,
No,
freaking hell. Okay.
no.
Jesus. Okay. Right.
I think the worst part is when you first hear of Majima, Sohei says, get Majima and Saejima. Saejima's in fucking prison in the first game.
Really? Oh, right. Okay.
Saejima doesn't come into it until like Yakuza 3 or 4. And in the show, Saejima gets shot and dies.
Yeah, Saejima does.
He
Yeah,
doesn't
that was-
he barely speaks. He doesn't do anything. He gets shot and then he dies.
he kind of comes across as like this, like basically the two characters both come across as psychos in a way,
Yeah,
basically. Like
except
they're
it's
like
not in the
they do
games.
things a little bit more, yeah. In the game, like Majima in the games is still kind of like a psycho, but a little bit different in some ways, right?
Well,
Is it?
it's like
Like he's just a bit, or is he a bit
fu-
extreme? Like what?
Majima.
Yeah,
Funnily enough, in the show, Majima is toned down. He's crazier in the game.
yeah. Okay, yeah,
Again,
yeah.
even if all you knew was the Majima everywhere meme, compared the game Majima from that to the show one's tame, man. He doesn't really do anything.
Interesting. Okay, fair. Right. Okay, so
Like,
that's the Majima stuff, I guess.
yeah.
Majima and Sajima, which is wild considering where if they however they want to do the next few seasons or whatever. Then, but we'll get
Oh,
into
don't.
well,
Yeah, we'll get into that
if
eventually.
they want to do more because it feels like they've set up anyway. But anyway, Carol, what's
There's
the
so
other?
many different. There's so many other differences. Like, I couldn't tell that was the detective. I could not tell that was supposed to be Makoto Date. And in the games, I think that's just because the actor looks way different than what the games portray Date-san as. Date-san is like a much.
Okay, right.
He's where Kiryu is in his mid-30s in the first game. Date is already probably like late 40s, 50s. And in the show, like he's a pretty young dude, you know.
Date also feels like a character that is just there for the sake of having a police presence. Like Date is very like I think he does that a little bit in episode 1 or 2.
Mm.
But then it's just like, why the hell is he here?
See, in the games, he plays a much bigger part because him and Kiryu are working together
Yeah.
to like solve the mystery behind Yumi, Haruka,
Yes.
Millennium Tower, like all the stuff and the money. The money actually is a plot point. The money they've been chasing in the first
Yes.
game. They chased this money as well, like it's like 10 million,
Interesting. Okay, right.
but it's from a completely different source. So in the show,
Right.
it's Aiko did it, but because
Yeah.
she doesn't exist in the games, it's somebody else who's tied to all of this, and like Yumi is also sort of tied to the money, but not it's in a similar way that she knows the person who's involved,
Right. Okay.
but she's not directly involved. Oh, what else? The Florist Desai is completely different as well.
Right.
Like his backstory is similar in the fact that he was an ex-cop who now knows everything about Kamurocho. Like he does have an underground network. But whilst the costume is the same and he looks as greasy, in the games, he's actually not that insufferable of a person.
Right. Okay. Does he still have the wall to wall of like monitors
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, and like a
Yeah,
little?
yeah,
Like...
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so that is all the same, pretty much.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
the
That's
setting
pretty
is
much all the
same.
same.
Okay.
Well, it's
Okay, that's cool.
similar because, like, in the games, you go through a whole like underground, like debaucherous, like casino, everything that you can't do above
Okay.
ground. You go to this secret underground place, and you can do everything that you could ever want to do under there. And he runs it all. It's very flash and all that, but underground. Whereas this is literally like, oh, he's in some like dingy fucking sewer building or some shit.
I can imagine there's like probably something where they can't really show a casino on
Yeah,
TV in
yeah,
Japan.
yeah.
I can imagine it. I imagine that's kind of maybe more of like a legal thing. Like I can put it down to
Yeah.
maybe like have see him running into legal issues and that because they can only show so much, and especially with gambling, they're really tight on it in Japan.
Also,
aren't they? So
again,
it's like
it's not just gambling down there. In the games, it's like it is implied like
okay, cool.
every debaucherous thing you could think of
I
happens
see, okay,
in
yeah,
his
yeah.
underground area. If you got the money, you can pay for it. Essentially, think
I
of it like
see.
that. So there's
Yeah,
another reason they
okay,
wouldn't
cool.
want to like show that on TV.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense. It makes sense.
Also, because that'd be
Okay.
expensive as fuck.
Yeah. The one thing about the Florist Desire is that, you know, like in some like video game to movie or TV series adaptations,
Mhm.
there's certain characters get introduced and like, you know, like it feels like that's a side quest character or like a main quest
Mhm.
character. Like the whole, oh, you've got to go to the Florist Desire to find this information. That felt like a video game thing. It's like, oh, okay, like you
That's
go
'cause
make
it
sure you go to
is.
this. Yeah, it like there's certain bits where it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that certain things feel like video
Yeah.
game tropes, and this felt like it. That
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 that was one moment
motherfucker
which
is.
is like, "Oh, okay,
He he
yeah,
he is in the games, and it actually is a big plot point to be like, oh, you have to go find the Forest of Sai. He's got all the
yeah,
information about Kamurocho. He knows what you need. It that is a whole thing. Except in the games, you have to go through. You find him in a park, but the park is also like
yeah,
a homeless colony.
right, okay,
So like people don't go there because they're like, oh, there's lots of
yeah."
homeless people there. Whereas in the show, I'm pretty sure it was like some rundown building or something.
Yeah, because in that it was just a rundown building for that bit, and then I think the homeless community bit was more like trying to find Aiko more than anything.
Mm,
Because you know when it's Yumi and Kiryu go to this
yeah.
kind of like what looks to be like a rundown like shopping district or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, 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 yeah. One of those like closed over, like roofed over, like shopping roads
Yeah,
or whatever. Shotengai.
yeah, yeah. That's like I think that's probably the most like homeless representation gets shown in this. I think that's and it's that moment
Mm,
really.
mm.
Obviously, again, by the sounds of it, not really linked to anything in the games. Interesting. Okay, cool, cool,
The
cool.
other big thing that doesn't exist
Yeah.
is something you mentioned: the demon of Shinjuku. That don't exist. That's a fucking lie.
Okay,
That's all
that's
a
a
lie.
really because that was like my next big thing because like obviously at the end of the TV series, it's basically Kiryu and Nishiki going head to head,
Yeah.
and it turns out that Nishiki, again spoilers, is the demon of Shinjuku. Like, turns out that that's him,
Yep.
and obviously in the games, demon and Shinjuku don't exist. Like, that's a
Nope.
completely new thing. So again, asking for spoilers and how the
Yep.
game ends, I guess. Does it still come to head with Kiryu and Nishiki?
Yes.
Okay, cool. But it's nothing to do with
It's
demon
got nothing to
sound.
do that with
Okay.
that. Basically, because they changed the story so much, they move things around and whatever. So I think they still wanted to have that conflict between brothers, like not just like
Yeah, yeah.
raised like orphan brothers, but like sworn brothers because they like joined the Yakuza at the same time. So they're sworn brothers. So I think they still wanted to have that because it's like a big climax piece, but they needed to give Nishiki another reason to come in contact and have to fight Kiryu and have that conflict of like morals.
Because then he mainly puts the blame on Kiryu for getting them into the Yakuza, which is
Yes.
why Miho is
Exactly.
yeah,
Whereas
that's where
in the
that is,
games, they
okay.
both joined, and there's a completely different reason that they fight. It is mostly still because Nishiki loves Yumi and knows that Yumi doesn't reciprocate. She loves Kiryu, and he's like bitter about it. That's all of the other stuff. I think for me
Yeah.
personally, the most strange change
Right, okay.
is the whole Dragon of Dojima thing.
Right, okay, yeah. So in the show, like I'm right in thinking that he admires the Dragon of Dojima and wants to be
Yes.
like him,
He
right?
watched a
And
fight as a kid and was like, "That man's amazing. I want to be that."
but then Nishiki reveals that the Dragon of Dojima is the one that killed their parents or something like that, or killed someone's parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a thing.
Mhm.
When you piece
Mhm.
bits together, it's like, okay, so Dragon of Dojima ends up killing these kids' parents, ends up taking them
Yep.
into the orphanage, and quits the Yakuza because he
Mhm.
is, the Blaze
That's
says,
all
as
in the
he's
games.
ex-Yakuza.
As in
So that's all in there. Yeah.
Kazuma, Shintaro Kazuma takes in all these kids because he was basically he is the Tojo clan's hitman essentially. Even though he's the patriarch of
Yes.
the
Okay.
family, he was like the best hitman. So he went in and took out all of his targets, but his targets happened to be a bunch of these kids' parents, Kiryu,
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Nishiki, probably Yumi, and a bunch of other kids. So then
Yeah.
he feels
Yeah.
bad
Yeah.
after opening the orphanage. He leaves. Someone takes over his family, like his clan, and
Yes.
so he
Yes.
then
Yes.
raised these all these kids. That part is true. In the show, Nishiki breaks that news, and then Kiryu finds out. I think because Kazuma takes like a gets slashed or something,
Ye-
and then he notices
on the
the
back.
tattoo,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
Kiryu's like, "Oh my god, you're the Dragon of Dojima." That doesn't happen
Right.
in the
Okay.
games.
hmm
Kiryu is known as the Dragon of Dojima because he is the most just and fierce like person in the Yakuza. Each person in the games is given a tattoo based on what the tattoo artist feels their aura is. And
Right.
the
Okay.
dragon is like one of the rarest ones because those types of people that embody a dragon don't tend to turn up. Like they don't appear that often. So Kiryu
Right.
is like an
Okay.
oddity in that sense.
Uh-huh.
That's why his tattoo is legendary and why he's the dragon of Dojima. Because most people don't
Mhm.
get dragon tattoos because the tattoo artist
Right.
doesn't see them as a dragon.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So this whole like made up fictitious thing of like Kiryu wants to be an underground fighter because of the dragon the dragon never existed. There
Right.
is
Oh,
i-
okay.
in Zero there is one other dragon, but it's not Kazuma and it's got nothing to do with underground fighting.
Right. So the difference is basically in the series, Kazuma gets that tattoo because he's the Dragon of Dojima
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. Kiryu just gets that tattoo. So in the show, yeah, Kazuma has the tattoo for whatever reason. Kiryu sees it. He wants it, but in the games, Kazuma doesn't have a dragon tattoo. He's got some other tattoo. I don't think we ever even get to see it actually.
Right.
There was one other
Yeah, yeah.
dragon in the Dojima family in Zero, but Zero came out way after a bunch of the other games. Like I think 5 was already out on
Yeah.
PS3 for quite a while, and then Zero came out on PS4. So there's a
Yeah, yeah.
extra new like prequel story, blah 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 blah.
Mhm. Yeah.
But that whole thing is fictitious. Kiryu
That's
doesn't fucking
interesting. That's
Kiryu doesn't. For one, who's bringing a kid to an underground fucking fight? That is just ridiculous.
Yeah, yeah. It's
Two, in Yakuza 1, the underground fights happen in the Florist the Size area. He runs the Colosseum, not the Tojo
Oh,
family.
wow. Okay.
Like, not the Tojo clan, not the
Right.
Dojima, not the
Right,
Dojima clan
okay.
either. Like, Sohei Dojima's got fuck all to do with it.
Interesting, okay.
So, like, it's interesting that this has a decent story to some degree, but I'm like, what is wrong with the game?
This
There's
but
so many glaring differences that as a fan, I'm just like, I don't understand. This baffles me
so
to no end.
right. So we always know that like when it comes like whether it be manga, anime, game or whatever, when it gets adapted into a show or like a
Mm,
film, we always know an adaptation is always going to be different somehow. We know they've got to make
yeah,
changes to make the story work, to make some of the characters work, etc. So this one is kind of they've gone a very, very, very different
yes.
direction with it. In some ways, it's a very original story. Um, how do you feel about that then? Like, because I saw it as quite a coherent story, but do you think that being a fan of games, do you think it's as coherent of a story as like taking the games away from it? Do you think that
It
is like, do you think
works.
it's,
It is a
it
coherent
works?
story
Yeah.
and things work, and mostly it does play out in a way that, ties up neatly, and there's things that
Yeah.
will lead into other things.
Hmm.
However, if I add the games back in, I
Yeah.
think some of the new stuff is like oddly complicated.
Yeah. Okay. Because then obviously this is season one right now, and obviously, like if they go make a season two, there's a lot of stuff they have to
Mm.
consider around in the like what are they going to bring? That they might bring in more original villains if that kind of thing, or they might take a villain from one again. I don't know what villains they are, but like
If
yeah.
they've claimed this one is Yakuza 1, then theoretically season 2 would be Yakuza 2, right?
Yeah.
But if they do this shit again, I'm out.
Hmm.
Yakuza 2
Right.
has a
Yeah.
great story. In my
Hmm.
opinion, probably one of the strongest stories in the
Right.
franchise.
Hmm.
If they do this shit again, they fucked up. They've done it
So
wrong.
in which case, then, if they were to do two, what differences are there in this that would make two would complicate two? Because obviously they've made a lot of like changes, including like taking what was it, Saijima as well. Like he's in this, but he gets killed
Okay,
off.
so
Yeah, like
Saijima again doesn't appear until
is
like
in till
3
3.
or 4. Um,
Mhm.
that will complicate things further down the line. Um,
Yeah. Is there anything in 2 that would be
it's
complicated because of what they've done in season 1?
possibly a sort of story with Kiryu because in this Yumi's still alive, but in 1 she's not. In the game she's not anymore. So that
Yeah.
leads to him and Haruka, like he ends up
Yeah.
taking in Haruka to raise her,
Right, okay, yeah.
which takes away, like, in my opinion and for the games, like a very big reason and motivator for Kiryu to keep going in the games. In the games,
Right, okay, yeah.
basically until she's old enough, which I think is around 4 or 5, he does
Mhm.
everything practically for Haruka.
Mhm. Okay, yeah.
But if she's not technically in his life like that anymore, like where she is his dependent, like she
Mm.
doesn't go around calling him uncle because, he's raising her. She's just calling him uncle because she's lives with Auntie Yumi now and Uncle Kiryu happens to keep coming by.
Mhm.
Yes, they could still play it off as like he's doing it for Yumi and Haruka, but then that also invalidates like another big point in Yakuza 2.
Mhm. Okay, yeah.
And where we don't actually know about Nishiki, what actually happens to him at the end, because we see him get taken away in the ambulance, but we don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nishiki isn't around in 2 anymore. He dies at the end of 1.
Right, okay, yeah.
So there is a lot. I think there's actually a fair few characters in the show that actually survived that shouldn't. If you were to do the story of 2 exactly like the games, they're not supposed to be around anymore.
So, yeah, because obviously Nishiki and Yumi, both major characters,
Yes,
are both in the games, both dead, but in this is both still alive. So where do they fit in now? That's what.
exactly.
Well, again, we don't know about Nishiki, but it feels silly to not have Nishiki die in that thing.
That's the thing.
Yeah,
If the
yeah,
show's changed this much so already, I kind of could see it that they're gonna be like, "Oh, Nishiki's back! Big surprise!
yeah,
Season
yeah.
2, Nishiki's back!" And you're like, "Fuck, you fucked it
Yeah,
already."
but then that's a huge thing. Like that means you have to create a whole new story for
Yeah,
Nishiki, which doesn't
exactly.
exist really.
You have to shoehorn him in, and it doesn't work because now Nishiki, Yumi, like most of the people that Kiryu grew up with,
Hmm.
their deaths become part of his moral compass.
Yes,
Nishiki
yeah,
in
yeah.
Yakuza 1 is supposed to show you what Kiryu could have been if he didn't stick to his path. Because
Of
Nishiki,
course, yeah,
much
yeah.
like in the show, goes fully down the dark path of being in the Yakuza. He gets fully involved. He does things that he morally normally wouldn't have if he hadn't had some sort of trauma. Whereas Kiryu sticks to his guns and still follows the original path that he set. Now that he's seen Nishiki do all of that, and then his brother dies, his sworn brother dies. He now
Hmm.
keeps that path because of that,
Okay, yeah.
and like because Yumi passes, and Yumi was Haruka's mother, and he loved Yumi. His whole path then morally still stays the same because now he has to
Mhm.
also do it for Haruka. You know what I mean? Like there's things that like make the character of Kiryu from Yakuza 1 onwards that with these
Right, yeah.
changes aren't doesn't me it doesn't mean they can't write him to be the same, but it doesn't make as much sense that he would keep the same reasons for doing the same things.
I get you completely, yeah. It just doesn't it it all seems a bit like, where the hell do they go from here in retrospects
Yeah.
kind of thing. And also, obviously, you got is it Saito? Kazuma, you said? What's his name again? The
Oh,
dad?
Shintaro Kazuma.
Shintaro, yeah, I fucking got that right. Obviously, you can play a lot. It looks like they're playing that story a lot more from that as well,
Oh
because
shit,
that
he's
feels
still
like
alive
it's
as well, isn't he?
yeah,
Yeah, he's not supposed to be.
yeah. So that feels like a huge plot point for season 2 by the looks of it. Like that feels like the thing that they go focus on, because that's the big cliffhanger of season 1. So that feels like it should be the next big thing. But obviously, he's also ex Yakuza. So does that even
I think
like?
Kazuma dies in a flashback in 2. So he can still sort of be alive, I think, if I'm remembering
But like,
correctly.
what relevance does it have then on Kiryu if Kazuma is still alive? You know what I mean? Like, if he's still alive and he's there, like, oh, he's the Dragon of Dojo. What, like, apart from playing that emotional side of it, where do you really go from there? I
Yeah,
don't.
I mean, that's
I
another problem is because their relationship is different. Whilst he's still his like inspiration, where it's like the show sort of played it off as Kiryu's kind of like conflicted about how it's like, oh, this is the man. I mean, it's kind of the same in the games. It's just he's admires him for a different reason
yeah. Okay.
because like in the game he does also Kazuma Shintaro Kazuma does tell Kiryu like I killed your parents or your parents are dead because of me because of I got orders and stuff. So like Kiryu still has that moment, but like
Yeah.
in the games, whilst he's like it's conflicting and complicated, he I'm pretty sure he still ends up like getting over it because he's like, but this is the man that I've respected for so long. Like he's what I built myself off of, and the man who
Mm.
raised me. So
Yeah. We'll see how that plays out. If they do a season 2, I don't think it's been confirmed or not. I don't know if it has or
I
not.
haven't seen
Um,
anything, but my god, please,
yeah.
please, Yakuza 2 story is so good. I think the only better story or anything that comes close is Yakuza 6.
I'd say for me personally, Nathan, I wouldn't get my hopes up for it because it looks like they're willing to change whatever they can
Yep.
to fit those. But so
Yeah.
I have a feeling there'll be a lot of changes, whether that is following more of two or whether it follows like anything different further down the line. I don't know. Again, I can't really say too much because I haven't played. Again, no knowledge of the games whatsoever, apart from like very very minute things. But as what you've described and how the show's gone, it feels that they're willing to do whatever they can to make it work for the show, whether that be taking stuff from other parts of the games or whatever. So I would not put my hopes on
Yeah,
them
I'm not.
following two in a loyal way. Let's put it that
I'm
way.
not. I'm not. I really
Yeah,
don't see it happening. It's quite
yeah.
discerning. Like
So, final thoughts on it then, Nathan. As someone like that is a huge fan of the games, long time fan of Yakuza, what are your final thoughts about the show?
it's okay if you go in and you don't expect the
Mhm.
actual story of the game
Yeah.
because it's not there.
Uh-huh.
Some of it, some small details, some things are there, but it's not there.
Mhm.
Um as a show, it's all right. It's not too bad. It's I guess it's a way to get people into the franchise, but honestly,
Mhm.
where it differs so heavily, and once you've like, let's say you watch the show, you go play the game, you're gonna be confused as fuck. You'll be like, that didn't happen, and now you won't know what is real and what isn't because you're gonna be like, which one made it up? Is the TV show the real one or is the game the real one? Obviously, you should go with the game because it's always been a game first, but whatever. Honestly, for me personally, I would say it's like it's 6 out of 10. It's okay.
Yeah. I understand. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Right. Well, is there anything else you want to say about this? And would you actually recommend this to other, like, if like anyone else that has any idea of the show, no idea of the show, would you tell them to watch this or not?
I would recommend it, but not as a hey, this is a thing from a thing. I would just be like, it's a
Yeah.
show. Just as a show,
Yeah.
I'd be like, yeah, okay, go and watch the show. It's not bad. It's all right.
Yeah.
But like, if there was another Yakuza fan, I would not recommend. No, I'd be like, you're gonna tear your hair out.
There we go. Well, there, there we go. Well, I guess we'll end it there. Any final thoughts, Nathan? Anything else you want to say before we wrap this up?
No, I told you I could have a whole episode just ranting about
Ranting.
how it's different.
Well, guys, if you want to hear more Nathan's rant, let us know in the comments below. Also, if you're a fan of the Yakuza games or the series, do let us know what your thoughts are. We'd love to hear from you. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell button for future Culture Boys videos. Click the links in our description. We have all of our podcast platforms there. And we will see you guys next time for another Cultured Boys episode. Bye bye.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Bye.